So Jed, so when did we first meet? We met in 2019. I believe I came here. I was seeking out an internship. Right. I decided I want a full-time career in filmmaking. Later on down the line, I was sort of interning there. Then I kind of got like a gig after that. I was sort of in and out. But then COVID hit, and that was when things really turned around for my life, where I was like, I need to, no BS. I need to fully go into filmmaking, and I need to have more of an entrepreneurial mindset. Because before that, I was kind of like, well, I know I want to work in film, maybe freelance, but like I need to think like CEO level here. And I was sort of writing out my ideas, my plans for where I wanted to go in my career. And I realized I needed a mentor. And you were the first person that popped in my head. I'm like, who do I know or do I know of who is exactly where I want to be? So that's where I sought you out. And we had a great first meeting. You really, in particular, you really put the idea in my mind to really think of myself and think of life as like I'm the main character, I'm the hero of my story, which no one really trained me to think like that. Parents, teachers, I wasn't really taught that way in school. And it was a really interesting perspective of not just viewing business, like how I should view a company that I would want to start or whatever, but how to view life, be the hero of your story. Yeah.
Dude, I remember when when we first sat down, I was like, what is this dude? What can he do? What skills does he have? And you had very lofty vision and dreams, and you were kind of like, how do we get there?
Thank you.
And honestly, dude, I have to say, at that time, I was like, I'm just going to do what I always do with like our interns here or with people who have asked advice. And I'm like, I have no idea what you're capable of, but let's just dig in and set the bar and then just kind of keep trying to raise the bar in these meetings. And you blew me away.
Thank you.
You blew me away, and I'm not blowing smoke. Like, I didn't really think that you had the chops. I didn't think that you, and I shouldn't think that way. That's like, honestly, this is a lesson for me to sort of judge a book before you read it. I wouldn't say by its cover, because your cover's great.
Thanks.
Fit, handsome Italian dude. No, I honestly just didn't think that you had that artist eye, that those deep chops to go really thoughtful and cinematic, and you totally got there.
Thank you.
One project after another, you kept delivering better and better results. So you made it really easy to critique and honestly like try to help you level up because you put in the work and you actually did have the raw talent, a lot more than I realized at that time.
Thank you.
But yeah, the main character in the story, hearing you parrot that back kind of makes like, I cringe a little bit because the whole be the main character of your story, it sounds kind of egotistical. It sounds kind of prideful. And I don't mean it that way. I mean it in like if you were to read your own story, if you were to watch the movie that you are writing with your life, are you proud of it? Are you excited by it? When you get to a moment where you have to make a difficult decision, are you going to root? Everyone is rooting for that hero of the story, the main character. But are you in real life going to do that hard thing that you need to do, that you would look back on and say, I'm so glad I did that. I didn't chicken out.
Yeah.
I put in the work. And that's what I mean by being the main. Obviously, you have to be a support character in everyone else's stories that are in your life, and like a guide sometimes, like this relationship, like the way that you asked me to be a guide, and an ally to a friend. Most of the time we're allies to those that are around us. What value can we provide? What can we do for them? Like, how selfless can we be? That has a tremendous impact on your own story, because they will then be an ally to you when you need. And that is like, that's paramount. So I'm glad that you picked up on some of that from the whole write your story bit.
Yeah.
And yeah, you've been a really good example of someone who's intentional and taking the steps and putting in the work.
Well, I greatly appreciate that. I'm humbled by that that long compliment there. So like going through Votary here, like we had come across I guess we can name drop, guys like Jamin, Jono, Mike, all very talented people that clearly I think eat, breathe, and sleep cinema. I guess this idea of what I'm getting at is sort of like, the concept of like, are you born great, born with like greatness thrust upon you? And I guess, I'd like to think I was like, the latter. I wasn't really born with much. I think I had the eye, but I wouldn't consider myself like super like talented. I certainly didn't have like the resources to create out of that, but I guess the idea of meritocracy was like a real motivation, real like inspiration. And I think like the lesson there is that it doesn't necessarily matter like what tools or resources you have, which family you came from. As long as you have that hunger, that desire, you can really achieve anything, right?
Yeah, I'm a big believer that you are born with certain gifts, and many of them we don't know what they are until they show up, or we polish them a little bit. We get opportunities to polish them. And some of these gifts are surprising. Some of them you just don't even know you have until even later in life. But, you take someone who was, let's say, didn't think they were a gifted writer, and then they sit and practice and they learn from others and they keep practicing, you still can get better at something, whether you were gifted in it or not, right? It's just going to come easier or harder. And there's those who be like, I could never carry a tune. I don't I can never play an instrument. I'm not an artist. I can't draw. I can't. And most of that I can't language is just reinforcing something negative. Right. I think we program ourselves with that kind of language. And unfortunately, just the hardness of life, like life is challenging. We go through a lot of things, and it tends to give us a thicker shell, a thicker skin over time. And that thicker shell can make you a little gun shy or a little more jaded and hardened and saying, no, I can't do that. When we're a kid, it's just like sky's the limit. We can do anything. And I think we actually have to be actively intentional about thinking that way later on as you get older. I now want to uncover more gifts, and I want to practice in the areas that maybe I'm not gifted. In your case, I do think that you were gifted with an eye, a compositional artistic eye to cinematography and photography, and the pace of a good edit, especially in documentary edit. I think you do have that as a gift, and you've then honed it some. So are we born some way or are we made? The answer is yes, right? We're born a certain way and we make the rest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, your book, I listened to it. I'm listening to it again. Fly. Wish we had a copy to like showcase in the frame, but
I'll go get it. I won't waste this opportunity. I'll bring some over for B-roll, quick cutaway.
Yes, excellent. Throughout your story, you kind of, which I mean, obviously I noticed at the moment I met you, and you carry it around with you to this day. But even sounds like when you tell your story back, growing up and when you were younger, it seemed like you always had this strong sense of conviction. So you tell the story of, which you describe as like one of the, if not the most important decision in your life, which was meeting Bethany, meeting your wife. And the way you describe the story, I don't want to like necessarily give it away for those that haven't read the book, but you approach her father about, getting him to sit down for pizza, saying that you wanted to date her, and technically you needed his permission because she was technically underage. She was like 17, you were 19. But I'm listening to that. I'm like, wow, at 19, I didn't know who I was at 19. This guy already has decided who he wants for his life partner. I just thought that was, it was really inspiring to, that at a young age, you knew yourself, you had this strong sense of self-awareness, and you just have carried that on, and it's brought you to where you are today.
Well, I wish it was that clear. I wish I could say, yeah, I've always been. I mean, I think I do have a fairly high degree of self-awareness, and I'm definitely visionary, so I can see forward and see what I want and go after it. Yeah, the story of meeting Bethany, I mean, the backstory there is that, so I was 20, I was a little older, right, but not, the difference between 19 and 20 is a lot at that time.
Yes.
Now looking back, I don't think it's a lot, but I was lonely. When my grandfather had died that summer, and I really looked up to him. I was coming out of a solid 2 years of darkness, kind of darkness of the soul, where I was living for myself and partying and just, looking for more fun with friends. And I just started to really lose who I was and what my mission was. And for me, a huge part of that, the central part of that, was my faith. Like, I didn't ever stop believing that there was a God, but I didn't have any desire to live for him. I just wanted to live for me. And that was in those 2 years. That's what led to 2 years of darkness, until it kind of all came to a head one night when I was quite literally sitting alone in the darkness in my apartment, and I felt awful. I felt heavy. I felt dark. I was like, who am I? I've never felt these waves of, I don't know how to describe it other than darkness and regret, loneliness. And I just, in the midst of that, had this really quick thought that injected out of nowhere, injected into my brain. And it was a tone, it was a voice, not an audible voice, but a thought voice. And that thought voice had a different tone than all those other thoughts that were plaguing me in that moment. And it was like this soft voice that just said, you forgot about me. You forgot about me. And the tone wasn't angry. There was a hint of disappointment, but it was mostly a tone that kind of had a sadness to it. Like, I wish you didn't forget about me. I don't want you to forget about me. That was the tone. And I really, truly felt in that moment like it was God speaking to me. And I started to weep, and I fell down on my knees, and I said, God, I want to live for you. I want to dedicate the rest of my life to you. I don't know what that means, other than I don't want to walk this life like it's for me. Everything's for me. I want to be of service to you. I want to be of service to others. I want to be your hands and feet, whatever that means. And it was as if God was pouring liquid peace into me. It came up from my toes, through my legs, through my body, my head. It was a physical sensation that I felt, as I felt like being restored by God in that moment. And I was crying and weeping, and I said at the end of my prayer, there's just this one other thing. I'm so glad that we're reconnecting, and I won't drift again. So there's one other thing. I don't want to be lonely in my life. If you can give me this person that I can do life with, my other half, I don't want to date and try to find and break up and try to find this person. I'm like, I just want to find the right person for me. Can you show me this person? And it was 2 months later that I met Bethany. And I knew right when I met her. Even though she was younger, she hadn't quite turned 18 yet. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I knew that this was like, I have to do things like almost like hundreds of years ago, where I approach her father and do almost a courtship. And her family had moved into the same town where my family lived, Norwich, New York, and it was very backwoods, and it was right in the end of 1999. And you wouldn't have experienced this, but in 1999, everyone was concerned with the rolling over into Y2K.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
The fear of computers shutting the world down and electricity stopping and whatnot. So there was handfuls of people that in our community that were like, you know what, we're going to go live in the country, and we're going to be set up for the end of the world when Y2K happens. My parents they'd always just wanted to have a hobby farm. So they're like, well, we might as well get out of the city and have a hobby farm. And so they were living down there, and I was just visiting them. But Bethany's family had moved in, and we got to know each other in groups around other people. We didn't date. I took her father out for pizza and said, I want to date your daughter. And he was like, you can write her letters. You can call her on the phone, but you can't take her out on an alone date. He didn't trust me. And honestly, now that I'm a father, 5 boys and 1 little girl, I would be really protective of my girl too. So he and I went out for pizza many times over the next 6 months, and he and I became friends, good friends. And eventually he gave me his blessing to marry her. But I didn't ask her to marry me until our first alone date, which was 6 months later.
Oh, it's a powerful story, I think, for especially people nowadays to hear that, when, especially in dating culture today, and you go on like social media, there's just so many effed up advice on like how you should approach people, the opposite genders. It almost kind of feels like now I get this sense that there's they're like the opposition in terms of like dating, and we kind of lose this sense of just finding like a good partner and finding someone who's gonna root for you in life and, you know, be by your side, and, you know, not seeking like arbitrary traits or anything like that, or not like listening to people that don't know what they're talking about, you know. I think it's important for people to hear to hear a story like that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds crazy to people. They're like, how are you going to get to know that person, whatever. But the key takeaway for me was just like, if you know, you know. And I knew that we were fully committed to each other. And when you're fully committed, you're going to learn together. You're going to get through things. And I fully knew we were going to get through things together, and we have. You know, this year marks 24 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm not against young marriage. I'm against uncommitted relationships. I'm against, I shouldn't say against, I'm not for. I think you need to, if you're getting married, you need to know this is it, in a good way, not a bad way. Like, thank God this is it. We have each other now for the rest of our lives. We can strengthen each other and be real partners and go after things together, as opposed to being somewhat lonely and having one arm. I felt like I had one arm tied behind my back until I had my partner.
Wow. Would you say, because like you said, it was a young marriage, and it, this is obviously before Votary. Would you say that having that relationship early on, that foundation, like, had you not have had that, would you have taken like Votary to either launching or like what it is now, like without that partnership?
No. I immediately, I was footloose and fancy free before, and I knew that I wanted to get married and have a family. But the moment that I did get married, I now had an incredible drive. It was like 10x my drive. Because if it's just you can kind of like go and do and dabble here. Like I was past that. now I wanted to dig in and build a career and get good at stuff. And I wanted to make her proud. I wanted to give her everything in the world, and not just things, but like great experiences. And yeah, I wanted to make her really proud of me and proud of us, so that motivation is like nothing else. And that comes from a healthy relationship as opposed to the old ball and chain mentality,
Right.
where it's like she's nagging me or
Happy life, happy wife. Yeah.
those kind of phrases and that mentality, unfortunately, it's pervasive in our culture, and our culture gets it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If you, first of all, a huge key takeaway is that God brought us together.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have no doubt in my mind that he opened my eyes to her and put her in my path and me in her path. When he did, I stand on that. And so he knew what we needed for each other. And that's key. Like, above my relationship with my wife is my relationship with God. And without that, it wouldn't have the strength. It wouldn't have the longevity and the ability. So yeah, if you do have that healthy perspective of that God gives us our purpose on this earth, and that if when we follow him, he actually sharpens our skills and brings our gifts to light, helps us become the best version that we were designed to be. Like, he made us. He designed us to be this way. If you do that, then you're optimizing your life. Like, people think God's a big rule maker in the sky. No, he like delights in watching us use the gifts he gave us. Right? He wants us to flourish and to be creative. Right? He made us creative. So, and he made us for relationship. So, relationship with him and relationship with our partner, relationship with all those around us. So, no, Votary would never be what it is without that series of events of me really recommitting my life to God, and then digging in and building a healthy marriage with Bethany. We didn't start Votary for a number of years after that, and she was the one that was like, yes, we can pivot. I was in marketing, and I wanted to fully pivot into filmmaking, and she was down, and we had 3 kids and a mortgage, and I was on the treadmill. Like, there was no easy way to just stop being, the day job, but we did it, and our family experienced the stretching that brings. But she was down, and thank God she was, because that allowed us the freedom to try more things and to, for me to grow as an entrepreneur.
That's wonderful. Yeah, it brings up another topic of dating culture now, where I think, especially with entrepreneurs, there's kind of like this romanticism of like this Sigma male, like being, single and, not like loving, just
High
like
value.
Yeah, like just like kind of Andrew Tate vibes almost. But I think, yeah, it seems like with with a lot of influential entrepreneurs and successful people out there, the X factor seems to be having a great partner, and in general, just great relationships in your life. Sure, there can be people that maybe came from bad previous relationships, and those can maybe mold you to want something better. But I think having those, like you described it as, you felt more a sense of drive, more a sense of responsibility and desire, because you're now, it's like you're not just doing this for yourself, you're doing this for others around you that depend on you, rely on you to make that happen, and to help each other grow and live a good life.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And don't get me wrong, I think being self-directed is key. Like, I do think that you have to have, you should develop, I guess this applies to young women, but I'm kind of speaking to young men here because it's the only thing I know, is that, you do have to lead yourself in order to lead other people, right? And I am a fan of masculinity. Like, I believe God made us. He made me masculine. He made my wife feminine, and we lean into that. She would say, I'm the head of our house, but what does that mean? Is it for ego, for me? No, it means I can be of service. It means if someone comes to the door, I'm going to the door to find out who it is, right? Mm-hmm. It's not so that I can, and that's why I think people have to check themselves, this whole, like, you said Sigma male earlier, like the idea of masculinity versus femininity, or like, are you leading your life as a lone wolf, or what does it look like to have partnership? Partnership is selflessness. It's service to the other. Mm-hmm. It's service. Like, if you can provide value and you just keep leaning in on giving that person what they need, what they want, you will get everything you need and you want. Right. You will. Maybe not just from that one person, but from the relationships in your life. Like, giving others what they need and want will get you everything you need and want.
Right, yeah. And on the topic of faith as well, because I'm a man of faith as well. We both talked extensively about this, and the whole concept of giving first. I think it was just, I didn't really understand it until I started trying it, whether it be in business or in just relationships I've had, whether it be with friends and family. And not only does it just feel good, kind of selfishly, but you see the world really does give back to you. Things start to happen. God kind of does his workings slowly but surely. It's like this morning, actually, I was reading Mark chapter 4, which whenever I'm kind of going through like a tough, rough patch or whatever, I usually go to Mark, and chapter 4 is usually the big one for me. Parable of the mustard seed. I'm just going to like briefly describe it. Basically, the idea that a farmer, he has there's 4 areas where he leaves seeds, and whether it be on like a thorn bush or not fertile soil or like fertile soil, the fertile soil patch is the one that ends up thriving. It takes a long time, but it's in an area where the foundation is solid, it's nurtured, and it eventually grows 100 times to what its potential was, So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great parable. And it's like I look at that parable and take it like, we don't know what lands with the people that we speak to, but we don't need to. Some things will land and they'll get, like, that seed lands and it gets roots. And if we're being the hands and feet of God, we're just doing what we need to do. And it's more about that dedication to just doing and trying, instead of judging the outcome, prejudging the person. Oh, are they gonna accept what I'm offering here or not? Like, no. Some things are just seeds, and they sprout and get root over time. And I've had people contact me years later, be like, you said this thing to me one time, and I'm like, I don't remember. I don't even remember saying that. But I'm glad that I did. I'm glad that somehow that was useful to you in that moment. And that's really helpful when people come back and give you that feedback, because sometimes the soundtracks of our mind can be negative and say, you're not doing enough, you're not living up to your purpose, those kinds of things. But yeah, giving first. You were just talking about giving first before asking for anything.
Yeah, right.
And I think I do think it's a godly principle, and I think it's like, the law of reciprocity, I think people call it. Like, if I do for you selflessly and I'm not expecting anything, this is the tough part, because you might need something, you might ask for something, but you have to be okay with the fact that it's not, because you don't know if they're going to say yes. You're just going to do first. Right? They might say no. And then you have this whole other question. Do you have a good attitude? Do you keep them in a good place in your heart or your mind if they don't reciprocate, right? But that's a powerful law. Like the law, like being able to do for others and just knowing deep in your soul that by doing that, you're strengthening relationships and great things will come back.
Absolutely.
Right? I've seen it. You can lean into it tactically in business where, and we do. We say, we're going to go make this video. We're going to offer this video to this person or this group or this nonprofit, whoever it is. We have an idea and we're going to execute on this if they'll allow us to. And we may or may not work with them after that. But I'm going to ask them, do they get value out of it? And if they did, can we keep working for them? And that usually leads to more work. It usually leads to a relationship because you took that risk. You invested that time. You invested that talent, that energy. And this is my advice to young people who are trying to start out in their, whether it's a film career, building a video agency, which I know you're now starting to do.
In the works, yes.
Or anything where you're trying to build up a firm from zero. My advice is you earn trust by doing things for low or no pay, but you pour yourself into it as though you're being paid a lot. It's not easy to do because you feel like I got bills to pay. I got things. I'm not making money on this thing. You got to find ways of making it work. You have to be creative and getting things done for people. But you can literally build a portfolio. And this is what you've done. This is what we talked about from the beginning where
yes,
you went and poured your artistry into these collaborations with interesting people, tattoo artist or a bladesmith, and you made these beautiful pieces of work. Not only did you earn the trust of those artists that you could then do more work for, and you have, but you now have these portfolio pieces that prove to anybody who's watching what you could do.
Right.
Absolutely. And so there's tremendous value in giving first.
100%. Absolutely. No, it's beautifully put. What else? Because you've spent some time, I think, especially recently, with young entrepreneurs, aspiring business owners, CEOs someday. Like, what else would you particularly what you notice now in, I guess, that world of young new leaders? What else would you advise them on? What else would you tell them to do, how to think?
Specific challenges so there's a lot of traditional advice that people have given for ages, like leadership advice, learning how to lead people. And there's a ton of information out there that I would also stand behind and say, learn how to lead. But I think I don't want to generalize too hard, but a lot of young people don't realize how much could be done with good communication. Like leaning into great communication skills and not being afraid of the phone, not being afraid of jumping into a FaceTime with someone. Yeah, communicating clearly. Don't hide behind texts. A few more points. I would say be very careful with what you promise and then do what you promise. Mm-hmm. Be someone who, you can instantly stand out from the crowd by just replying to emails quickly or to calls quickly. And don't be someone who's like, oh, I'll get to that in a day or another. Like that ticking clock. And I genuinely feel that it's a superpower to be patient in the long term and persistent, a little impatient in the short term. Meaning, you have to have a ticking clock that's like, how much could I get done today? But that it's for a longer term thing, and you're okay with the amount of time it's going to take. You don't want to get into a frenzy, right? I don't recommend hustle culture to the point where you're just like running ragged. I think there's a flow state, and I think finding that is actually really useful, where you can get become at ease, and then lean into your genius, your superpowers. Finding your superpowers is really key. You know, a lot of people think in terms of, I have blind spots and I got to fix that, and you know, I don't. And it's natural for us to try to fix our, I would say, unbalanced areas. We want to do that, but that's not really where we have the most leverage. Mm-hmm. Where we have leverage individually is with our own individual superpowers. Like, I'm an ideas guy. I'm not a great manager. I'm an ideas guy. I love starting new things to a fault. You know, I'm like, I can go from 0 to 1, right? It's that 1 to 100 that I'm not so great yet, but I'm working at it. But I know that about myself, that I'm an ideas guy. And so I have to bring ideas to different areas, not just start new companies and lose focus, but bring an idea to a client, an existing client, bring an idea to a new prospect. If I'm an ideas guy, I need to stay in the zone of ideas.
Yeah.
Give more ideas to the team. So that's just like, you have to lean into your areas of leverage, like pay close attention to where you're better at certain things than others. And I would say a big one would be, you know, treat people the way you want to be treated. Like, it sounds so old school and trite and like Sunday school, heard it or whatever. If you really get into a mindset where daily you have this frame or this lens that you're looking through that is like, would I want that? This thing I'm about to do or about to say, would I want that if I was on the other end? Mm-hmm. What would I want? If I was them, what would I want? Those are powerful, powerful questions. Very powerful words. If you start to shape your behaviors and what you choose to do based on what would you want if you were in their shoes, that's intense. Yeah. That you will start leapfrogging forward with your relationships and with progress. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, not just in your career, not just in money. And that's an area where we could talk too. But in all the aspects of your life that are meaningful, you know, relationships, and what you enjoy, where you feel purpose. You know, if you really are treating people the way you would want to be treated, it's a tremendous point of leverage.
Absolutely. Well, and I love this idea of superpowers and like knowing your superpower, where you stand. And this is kind of a struggle I've had, especially recently. As you mentioned, you know, starting this new agency, one of the motivators is I've one-man banded my career this whole time, and I've been the ideas guy, I've been the manager, I've been the shopkeeper, I've been the camera operator, the editor, the audio guy, the DIT, you know, the technician, the sales guy, the accountant. I've worn all these different hats, and the struggle, I think, has been, I mean, I know there are certain areas that I definitely don't want to do, but there's a lot that I'm like, I could do this, I could do that. How do you think, like, just finding out your superpowers, like, what do you think is a good practice for getting into that and having that keen self-awareness?
I definitely think most of it comes from experimentation. You have to do these things and be, like you just said, self-aware while doing them. Do you feel like you're accelerating? Does it feel like there's a positive feedback loop, like the better you do, the more energy you get for it? Mm. That's an interesting question. Or is it a negative suck? Now, this is a little tricky, because when things get hard is when we get to experience a breakthrough. You should keep going until you get a breakthrough. And then when you do get a breakthrough, if you feel like you want to keep going after that, well, that means you just leveled up. If after you get a breakthrough, you reflect and you say, I'm glad that I learned what I learned, and I'm glad I got that breakthrough, but I actually don't think this is my superpower. You'll know. I think a lot of this is really just gut. Yeah. You'll know. Now you have some skills in guiding someone else. You know how to look for blind spots for people who are doing that, whatever the thing is. And you need that, especially if you're going to be a CEO. You need to know a decent amount about a lot of things.
Right.
I wouldn't say a little about a lot of things. You need to know a decent amount about a lot of things. But then in certain areas, those are your areas,
right,
where you should spend more time there because you'll get more leverage.
Yeah. I think this brings up an interesting dichotomy of like, how should I describe it? It's like the flow state, like you said, and also it's like even when times get tough and it may not feel like super easy to get into that flow, you still do it anyway, right? Like, for instance, if I'm editing, I may be stuck on like a certain like interview that I got to cut down, and I'm tempted to just check my phone or whatever, but maybe that doesn't disqualify me from being an editor. So maybe you just got to put the phone away. Maybe you just got to eliminate the distractions, just do the work. It doesn't just because it's a little harder for me to get in my flow state sometimes, it doesn't disqualify me from being a really good editor, maybe, as an example.
Definitely not. I think even in our areas of genius or our superpowers, there's the temptation for distraction is always there. More so now than ever before, I think, in history. That is more about building habits, mental habits, emotional habits, to where we can control our focus and stay in it. Yeah, the idea of focus is really detached from genius or from the superpower thing. I think there are very distracted people who know their superpowers, and they are just distracted while they're in it. Yeah, eliminating distraction is this whole other thing that is really worthwhile, worth doing.
Right. Talk about, I guess, the challenges that come with entrepreneurship and resiliency, whether it's in the start of running a company, of building a company, or maybe like later on, wherever you are in your career. I think challenges may come and they could be minimal or trivial, or they could be very threatening. And I think what some people don't understand is like, I think any job comes with challenges, and I'm not trying to downplay, the risks and challenges of any role, but I think especially when you're running a business, you could lose your livelihood could be at stake, as is, your employees. And these are all chapters that I think that are inevitable in the life of running a business. How do you navigate through these? Like, again, bringing up Fly, again, your book. There's a really good story, which maybe I'll let you go into that if you want, of a moment where you were at your lowest, and to the point where the electricity in your home was out. Like, I guess, and maybe even as we talked about earlier, the people that you have these amazing relationships with, you have a great foundation with your partners, even when they may start to doubt you, like getting through these rough patches and maintaining faith in yourself, maintaining faith in the Lord, of course, to get through those hard times and building that resiliency,
Yeah, hard times are hard. They're hard. I mean, one of the things that annoys me is in this BS culture of self-improvement is you listen or read these stories of people that got through hard times, and they're like, I went from this to this, and it's almost like their tone is that they'll never go back. I went from $0 in my bank account to $4 million. And sometimes I want to fast forward in their life and see if they ever went back to zero again. Somehow, if we could somehow know that.
Right.
Because the reality is life has ups and downs, and we want to try to act like we level up and arrive to a new place, and we're never going back to that old place. That's just not always true. If I'm being honest with you, I've had many times when I have said to myself, I'm never running out of money again. Like, I got a team, I got a sales process, I've got and then the next year or 6 months later, I'm out of cash, no money. And I'm like, where did the sales go? What happened? I guess I'm not as good as I thought I was. I guess I'm not as secure as I thought I was. And then you're re-flooded with these thoughts and emotions and feelings. And it's in those times that it's not just the new challenges, it's also the revisiting old challenges that can be, you can be tempted to be a little maddened by it because you're like, I thought I was out of this. And this is not an area that people talk about enough. The idea where this thought that's like, I thought I graduated from that. But truthfully, we never fully graduate from anything. We learn little bits, and there are tools in our tool chest where when we come back to this, when we bump into this again, we have things we can do. We're not stuck. And that story that you were just referring to, I'll tell it quickly. It was back in 2010-ish. I had been trying to build a business for 3 years. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any prospects. I was sitting alone in my garage office, and I felt pretty miserable. We were 1 year behind on our mortgage payments for the house we lived in. We had been served letters from the county saying, we're going to auction your house. Like, we're going to repossess your house if you don't work something out. We had gotten letters from the electric company saying, we're going to shut your electricity off. And I'm in there in my emails saying, God, what do I do? I don't have any prospects. I don't have any money. I've got 5 kids, 5 boys. Bethany had already gone to the food pantry many times. There was no food stamps that we had at that moment. Although we'd had food, we'd done food stamps. It felt pretty dark again, and it felt pretty miserable. And while I was like trying to sort some of this out, my oldest son, Jai, who works with me, he's amazing. He's such I'll talk more about him.
Amazing guy.
In a little bit. He was there. He came in or something. He was sitting next to me, and I think he said something like, "Are we rich, Dad?" And I just wanted to fold in that moment. I just was crumbling inside. He's like, "Are we rich?" He's just a little 9-year-old, or something like that. Something like that. And I think I had some self-talk and some like trying to explain to him, like, of course when God looks down on the earth, he sees a lot of people. Many of them are in a tougher financial spot than when we're at. Many people living in the same home they don't have vehicles, they don't have access to health care, and worse, everybody in their situation is just like them, so there's not a lot of opportunity for them to change their situation. So I'm like trying to say these things to him to bolster my own like energy to get after finding a prospect somewhere in my emails or somewhere online or something, and the electricity turns off in that moment. And my computer goes dead. Lights go off. I'm like, I ran to the door, and the electric truck did a physical shut off and drove away. And I was just like, could it get worse? And the reality is it can always get worse. And you have to pattern interrupt. You have to do something by your will to keep yourself going. And so, we went inside. It was dark. I promised the boys we were like camping. We took the mattresses out and put them on the floor, and had a flashlight. And Bethany just went to sleep. She was exhausted. She couldn't even like emotionally handle it was a terrible time in our life. But I look back on that, and it did something to me, and it did level me up. It did give me, it gave me a bit of trauma too, and not like someone died kind of trauma, but a bit of Like to this day, when I go to the grocery store and take out my debit card, there may be hundreds of thousands of dollars in this bank account, but I go to put the debit card in to buy groceries, and you wonder if it's going to get declined. There's like this feeling and that stuff sticks with you when you go through really hard times, but it also makes you a lot stronger, you know, and that's not cliche. It really does make you stronger. I mean, that story, the progression of that story was the next day I went and met with someone to try to get some advice, and he had gone through really hard times himself. And I wasn't trying to sell him anything. I just really wanted advice. But by the end, he was like hiring me for my services.
Amazing.
And it injected cash back in the business, and like things turned around and got better and better. And I have so many of those stories, Mark, where at the 11th hour, something came in, and it's still happening to this day. You know, cash flow management, where you're just like, I have a team to feed. We got to get that check. We got to get it in. Like, those are the areas that people don't realize when they look at entrepreneurs. They just think, oh, they own the business. They're the boss, you know?
Right.
But if you're of service, if you're leading and you're supporting people, you look at it like, what do I got to do to feed these people?
Right.
Right. And do I got to stay up all night? Do I have to go meet with that client and offer them a cash discount to get the payment early, to get the money in the bank, to pay there's all these things, right? And it forces us to get better and smarter and more resilient, anti-fragile. When you become anti-fragile, you can just do more. You can get after whatever the next business idea is, because you know you're not going to fold and crumble. You know there's always going to be a way. And so it puts that thing in you that gives you the ability to take action, to keep moving, because you've done it before.
Yeah.
And you didn't die.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but if you stop, if you take yourself out of the game, then you program the mind that, well, I failed, therefore I'm a failure. No, you can't do that. You're not a failure. You just keep going. You just keep going. Where there's a will, there's a way. You just keep going.
I think that's powerful to hear. And I just from that story alone and how you wrap it up at the end, I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. And I think one also that kind of sticks out for me is no matter how difficult times are and how dire situations are, is like maintaining this sense of like, even if times are rough, you're maintaining this, I guess, positivity. It's like, yeah, we're camping, kids. Like, you know, tonight, I think there's even been, if you look historically, there have been leaders that have kind of had that sort of, it's not fakeness, but it's this sense of like, we're getting through this, combined with like being in the present and also just maintaining hope. I think, I believe FDR during the Great Depression, he would do these radio broadcasts where he would do like these comforting kind of stories. I think Abraham Lincoln would like do like story time. He'd do like those like story kind of jokes, if you would call them. The underlying thing is, regardless of how you may be feeling, inside you may be feeling like all those things you described, like I'm worthless, like I'm not going to get through this. What am I doing? But you have to, it's that selfless sort of element we were talking about, right? Like you have to do this for your team, for your family. You have to stick it out regardless of how you're feeling, is maintaining that sense of hope and faith, right?
Yeah. You just said it there. You just do it regardless. Mm-hmm. Because if we followed our feelings, I mean, there's days that I just want to, I have a victim mentality, and I hate to say that, but it creeps in, right? Where you're just like, oh, I hope everybody can see what a terrible time I'm having. I'm going to go crawl back into bed and act depressed. And those thoughts come into your head, and it's like, for what? For what? No, you have to just put one foot in front of the other and do the thing that's useful to other people, be of service, and you'll get through it. You'll get through it. You will walk through it. And it's miserable while you're walking through it, but so what? And miserable compared to what? That's another thing that helps me. I genuinely say to myself, well, I'm not in Nazi Germany. I'm not in a death camp right now.
Yeah.
You know, like Viktor Frankl
Mm.
in Man's Search for Meaning, he had this objective moment where in his mind's eye, he sees himself in this way better situation, and he realized, oh, I'm in this crazy human experiment right now. You know, he had no shoes on, his feet were frostbitten, he was starving to death. People were fighting for morsels of food. You never knew who was an informant or whatever. Like he was watching people die every day from this. It's hell. It's total hell. It's nothing like what I'm going through.
Right.
But in that moment, he still had an objective view on his life and said, oh, someday I'm going to be on the stage explaining what this was like scientifically to a group of students. And then suddenly the story of what he could see, it took on a whole different shape. And that gave him energy because of his objective view. And I do think that that's a genuinely powerful aspect of story when we can pause in our moment of misery, look at where we're at, kind of separate from our body or from our mind and look at where we're at objectively and say, you're going to have a story to tell as you get through this. You're going to have a powerful story to tell. And not for the fun of telling that story, but because it will remind you and make you better and make you more resilient and get you through. And so I don't know about other people, and I hope people can experience what I've experienced with that, but I actually can inject a bit of energy in myself when I pause and think about the story that I'm writing in that moment, getting through.
Right. Yeah, and I think a lot of that through, like we kind of already talked about this, but through, as those episodes may continue, those hardships may continue, you can always, I think, as long as you made it through maybe one big one, you can kind of, I don't want to say it gets easier, but it's maybe a bit more manageable and more, like you think back, like, you know, kind of a small example, but the idea of, you know, when you said about going to the grocery store and, you know, get credit card getting declined, it's like, well, you know, not only does it make you stronger, but that also, I think, can kind of make you smarter too about maybe money, for example, hypothetical. Through people that have seriously gone through hardship, I mean, I guess it's obvious, but that's where you find, I think, most resiliency. I think a lot of people today, maybe, I don't know if it's like they're not like challenging themselves or not putting themselves in challenging situations, you know, taking risks, that sort of thing. But maybe if there was more of that, especially at a young age, they would maybe ask themselves those questions more as like, am I in Nazi Germany? No. Or what else do you say? Like, am I, you know, that vision. Someday I will be on stage talking about this, you know. It's powerful. It's not something that I think naturally comes to mind when we're in the thick of problems like that.
Pain is the greatest change maker. Pain motivates us to make changes. And a lot of people that are suffering from nonsensical, non-productive issues in their life, you know, mental disorder that you see out there. I'm not going to try to point the finger, but there's plenty of people and people groups that are suffering mentally. They're suffering because they haven't experienced getting after a vision, experiencing pain, breaking through, feeling the joy of that, and then continuing to level up. Many people have had a really, really comfortable life, especially here in America.
Yeah.
And everything's been provided for them. You know, you look at these college campuses and you see people melting down on all sides, like different people groups, whatever, what they think they believe. I don't fault them for that, but they're melting down in this way that's not productive. And the amount of tribalism and shouting down other people, and they don't have an answer to good logic when it's presented to them. It's just everything's emotions, everything's hyperbole and hysteria all the time. And I just think it's really unfortunate. And I guarantee you take that person, you pluck them out of America, you take them over into a third world country where they need to survive and they have real things to struggle with, and they'll change. They would change. They would be like, they would get better at life.
I almost kind of wonder if the particular example, the youth in these college campuses, if maybe it's like a psychological kind of compensation for the fact that there isn't any danger. They have everything and anything they want and need. And I wonder if it's almost like either individually or in a group thing kind of thing where they have to, in our human nature, we have to have this sort of survivalist mentality in us.
You have to get through conflict.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have conflict, you're going to manufacture conflict.
Right. Yeah. Maybe the converse to that is like manufacture conflict in a positive, meaningful pursuit, like starting a business or going on a mission trip, something like that.
Yeah, I would say you're not manufacturing conflict when you do that. You're going to encounter it. Mm-hmm. You're getting after a vision, and you're going to encounter conflict. If I have this acronym STORY that I like to talk about, and it's like see the goal, take action, overcome obstacles, reflect on what you've learned, yell it from the rooftops.
Yeah. And that's your story acceleration, right? That's
your
book.
Yeah, which we've kind of rebranded to call story growth.
Story growth, okay.
And it's really key, I think. Anybody that has a vision, sees the goal, and then takes action, they're going to experience conflict. And conflict is the most vital element of the story. Anything that's interesting that we ever watch or listen to or read in a story, it's only interesting because of the conflict.
Right.
So when we're in conflict, why wouldn't we think this is the meat of the story? This is the part of my story that's going to really matter. What do I do in this conflict?
Right.
And yes, it's good to have conflict if you're getting after a goal. Mm-hmm. Where a lot of these people break down is, they don't even necessarily know the goal. It's just some moving of goalposts all the time. Pronouns.
Yeah.
Okay, there was a couple, and then there was a million, and the idea of what's socially acceptable, political correctness. Well, it's one thing on one day, and then their own cannibalistically turn on each other and turn it into something else the next day. Right. I mean, this is just a cycle of crazy. Yeah. And I'm not saying the person is insane, and I'm not saying that they have diminished value. They are a child. They are a person created in the image of God. Doesn't matter what they've done, they have value. Yeah. So I am not sitting here saying discount them. No. I'm saying that I feel it's unfortunate that they've lost their way. And how do we interact on such wildly different views? The only thing I can say is with love and empathy, like going back to that, treating them the way I want to be treated. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be shouted at, so I'm not going to shout at them. I want to be listened to, so I will listen to them.
Yeah.
And, and many other, but it's like that is what's needed for all people types. We're all humans. And if we need to listen to each other, we need to be patient and have conversation. We don't have to agree. That's okay. But the moment that we get into this like tribalistic, I'm not trying to understand you, I'm just trying to beat you, trying to win. now it's not productive.
It's so easy for people to fall into that trap. And, you know, again, where faith comes in, I do believe those are all like the workings of the devil. And there's this idea that I kind of subscribe to. It's like if the devil can't necessarily get you, he'll distract you. And like you said, internally, these are good people. Everybody has value to offer. But if the devil can kind of misguide you a little bit, do little miswirings in your brain, you know, all it takes is like, to quote the Dark Knight, you know, the Joker, he's like, all it takes is a little push, you know, to set people into that sort of tribalist mindset. And then you have inverted productivity, I guess you would call it. You're now you're kind of destroying the world, you know, and you're not making it a better place.
Yeah, you're destructive.
Right.
You're destructive instead of being constructive.
Yes.
You know, tearing down instead of building up.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the hope for that, I guess, is like, especially, you know, we're talking now a lot about like this generation now of youth. I mean, and I my mom works in higher ed, so she sees this firsthand, you know, of the absurdity that's happening on college campuses across the country. What do you think for youth? I mean, I think you and I would personally say go to church, adopt some sort of faith.
Yeah.
What do you think? Yeah.
The
solution.
what's the fix-all? What's the solution here?
Yeah.
I mean, the solution is God, for sure. The solution is but people won't go to God unless they recognize they have a need for God. And that's tricky, you know, because when you're in pain, that recognition is there. You know, you talk to war veterans, and they say, there's no such thing as an atheist in a foxhole.
Yeah.
Doesn't exist. That level of fear, that level of pain that grips you, you're crying out to God. It's in us to seek a higher power. But if you don't have that pain, if you're living in what has been a pretty comfortable life, and you're manufacturing conflict like what we were talking about, well, you might not feel like you have any need for God, right? So pain, these historically, these societal cycles, they have big ups and big downs. We probably will have a lot more pain before people turn back to God, and I hope not. I see it as my duty to tell people what my experience has been. You know, I have a love for people. I don't want my friend, my fellow human, to experience suffering. I want them to have the peace that passes all understanding.
Right.
That's what God gives, is the peace that passes all understanding. If I pay a bill that's been nagging at me, that's a peace that's like, I paid that bill. I understand it.
Right.
But in the midst of turmoil, when God gives you a peace that passes all understanding, you realize, I don't have a reason for this peace, but he's given me this peace. That, for me, has been some of the biggest evidence for God.
Yeah. Calming of the storm.
Yes. And in moments that you don't think is possible, but you just have this peace. You feel like, no, God's got me. He's got me. He's got us. He's got our family. We're going to be fine. And then we are. You know, that's incredible. And I want that for everyone. I want people to have that peace. I want people to recognize that they get that from having a relationship with God. But your original question, like, okay, what about young people? I don't know. There's all types. Some are, I mean, there's deep thinkers that are like searching and questioning, and they're going to get somewhere. You know, God says, draw near to me, I will draw near to you. And they're the people that are studiers. The amount of stories of people who have tried to disprove the story of Christ using the Bible. They'll go to the Bible and try to find the holes or historic whatever. Yeah. And guess what happens? The Holy Spirit pulls them in with the living word. They read these words that are eventually jumping off the page and meaning something to them, and they can't deny what they're feeling, right? So I just I recommend to people that they study, that they're intellectually honest. Be honest with yourself. What is it you want in life? Do you feel a lack of purpose? Are you like, do you feel yourself being nudged towards nihilism, where it's like nothing matters? No, that's bull. No, living this life matters. Relationships matter. You know, what I can do for you, what you can do for me, what we can share, what we can experience, how we can help each other, how we can help those that are less fortunate and lift them up. And not just with handouts, but with opportunities and teaching and giving of ourselves. These things matter. This is a life worth living. But you have to be intellectually honest. You have to say, I am objectively going to seek truth. There is a real truth. God's truth is the only real truth. And it's objective. Now, it's not always easy to find. Like, definitely you have to do some studying and some navigating, and that's life, right? But I don't believe in your truth versus my truth. Just live your truth, bro. No, I don't believe in that.
Yeah.
I don't. I think there's objective truth. You know, and you can trap anybody in that argument. You say, is rape wrong?
Yeah.
99.9% of people will say, yes, rape is wrong.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Right? Well, why? Because society says it's wrong? Is it wrong in the animal kingdom? You have to have intellectual honesty. And if you are intellectually honest, then you go to Scripture and you try to say, what is this whole, like, creator thing? You know, were we created? Yeah. You know, how well do we really know this whole evolution story? That we evolved from this single cell organism? No, there isn't evidence of that. There isn't. Yeah, there's evidence of within the species having adaptation or some changes, but not jumping to another species. No, I believe God made us. And we see evidence of that all around us. You know, you go to a piece of art. That art is evidence of an artist.
Powerful.
And so if you're gonna be intellectually honest, you wrestle with that. You say, well, crap, if there really is a creator, how powerful would that being be? What does that mean about, like, life after death? Like, is this it, or is there more? I think wrestle with that. We all have to wrestle with things in life. Why not choose things that are meaningful and important to think about, and think about it honestly? So I want that. I want that for my fellow humans. I don't want it in like a proselytizing kind of like, I feel it's my mission to convert you. No, I want people to experience the peace that I've experienced. I feel like they would feel so much more meaning and purpose in their life. And I want that for others out of love, not because I feel like I have to do something. You know, when you think about society, you think about a civilization, and a civilization is civilized, right? And that's like going from chaos to order. And to go from chaos to order, you have to have sort of rules for engagement. And the more those rules can be personal and like self-guided, what do I mean by that? I mean, like, you see evidence of fruit in your life from following these principles, the more orderly I think it becomes. And people don't realize, I think, the power structures that are out there right now, the big power. Some do. Some people do. And whether you do or you don't, a lot of people feel hopeless and they feel helpless. They're like, well, how could we ever change the government? The government's just the way they are. Or, you know, I'm this little speck and my voice doesn't matter. Well, your voice matters to you, and it matters to those in your sphere. Everybody has like influence to some degree. And so you want to do the best you can with that, right? This is an election year, and so it's hot on people's minds, like the way society is shaped. You know, what is human flourishing? What is good for society? What is good for our country? And these are good questions to wrestle with, right? I personally love business. I love business. Business, you know, capitalism in its pure form has lifted so much of the world out of poverty. It's improved the lives of people worldwide. Where it's messy is when it's like big corporate interests that are colluding with the government. The government has the guns, the government has the power, government has authority that can put you in jail for whatever, right? When you have this team up between business and government where there's special dispensation, special relationship, that's where I think it's really messy. And like, as passionate as I am about this topic, I do think the spiritual topic is more important. But I don't not talk about these earthly constructs too, because freedom is incredibly important to me. I want my kids to have freedom, and I want my grandkids to have freedom in their life, like a free life. That is something that is not like that prevalent in history, right? It's like not. It's the exception, not the norm. And I don't want us to lose it in America. I don't. I want to see the world become more and more free. But the only way that it can is if we have a fair system, you know, where we treat each other fairly. We have our freedoms to worship the way that we choose, to conduct business the way we choose, so long as it's not hurting other people. And pursue happiness, pursue life, right? We need those freedoms. Right. And that's something I definitely am concerned about. Is like losing more and more of those freedoms. I don't want that. I don't want that. I'm not sitting here worried. I'm not like afraid of the future, but I'm not willing to do nothing. Mm-hmm. I want to see these freedoms restored, maintained. And so like areas that I think are the big areas that would really improve our society, our country, is if we could have a fair election, if we knew that it was fair. Mm-hmm. You know, like I heard someone recently say, you know, we can count the money that's in our bank account. Like the ATM's not usually making a mistake, but we can't count these ballots properly.
I agree.
Or, you know, mail-in ballots, like the idea of fraud with like no voter ID needed. Like, no, I think we need ID. I think it's like you have a right to vote. We should have laws that actually track that. This should not be a difficult situation. No. The American public should not wonder or worry if the election was rigged or not.
Right.
It should be settled, you know, and we agree, and it's good. No matter who wins, it's a vote of the people. If we don't have that, so that's like a primary concern. Can we actually vote? Do we have a democracy, a republic that we can rely on, that we can believe in? And another thing would be the size of these corporate entities and the amount of influence that they have over their person, their horse in the race, their congressman, their any politician. Right. You know, I don't care that how big you get, how much I believe in like, that's not capitalism. That's not free market.
It's globalism.
That's globalism, and it's going after. This is where I think capitalism. You can't even call it capitalism that broke down. It's just greed and power grabbing, and I love business, but I don't love these sticky, shadowy rules of engagement where I'm going to buy my politician. If I'm big enough, I can buy my politician and keep this monopoly growing.
Yep.
No, I'm not into that. Yeah. So, like, if there are ways that we could limit that, laws or a constitutional amendment or something, we work with this organization called American Promise. And they're trying to pass a constitutional amendment that will keep big money out of the government. And I believe in that. I believe the founding fathers never could foresee the Googles of the world or the big pharma of the world, the big tech, the big banking systems that can have, untold amounts of money, which is fluff money, by the way, which is just like created out of thin air. But that's a story for another time.
Right. Well, it's important to talk about, especially for youth, but I think in general, is you don't realize, like, I know it sounds like the obvious, but you don't realize we are the very first country in the history of mankind on the world that we have these basic human rights written into law. And I think people just take that for granted now. And I know I sound like the toting, flag-waving freedom isn't free, but it's true. The reason why the founding fathers wrote that into the Constitution was because they had seen, historically, scores, hundreds of empires, regimes coming and going, and the basic underlying narrative was there, again, no freedoms, guaranteed into law, and like they saw how corrupt, how easy it was for even just a few people in power to come in. And again, we're kind of anticipating that with, like you said, big tech, big pharma, but also even politicians trying to, kind of like what I was saying earlier with like the devil, trying to just do those slight miswirings. I think that's all it really takes. And I think keeping that in mind, that firm sort of sense of, I guess constitutionalism, what you would call it. I recognize, because I love history and I love analyzing all different kinds of empires and, the wars and uprisings that have happened historically. And it's important to keep that in mind because it may not happen tomorrow, but, in our children's lifetime, sure. Definitely over the course of 100 years it happens. I mean, you brought up Nazi Germany. I mean, if you think about it historically, that was yesterday.
Right.
That was not a long time ago. And
no.
We're fine. I think just now we're kind of, people are sort of, who have lived that in that era have just passed on. My grandfather was in World War II. So that's very recent historically. And you may think like, oh, well, that was in Germany. That was another country. Well, Germany was a pretty developed country like the U.S., It's not a case of like it's an exception, not the rule. No, this historically we see this in all kinds of government and all kinds of powers, regardless of how free you may think it is or how good the economy is. We're always a slip away.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the founding fathers knew that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Mm-hmm. So they wanted the power to be distributed. It was a bet on the individual, the average citizen, and we need that. We could carry on growing incredible wealth for the whole world, with free trade, worldwide free trade. I mean, think about the magic of business and free trade. It's what we're doing right now, where we are sitting here by our own wills. I could stand up and walk away. You could stand up and walk away. but we're cooperating. We decided to do this, and that's what business is. One person offers this, another person says, yes, I give you this for this. It's beautiful. It's amazing.
It's wonderful.
It's incredible. And it's so much better than any other system that's ever been tried, as long as the government is not involved in it.
Right. Yeah. I think through capitalism, I think a good way to look at it is we're both adding value to each other's lives. We're both trying to make each other's situations, our own lives, just a little better. Maybe push the needle as a species in our time on Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Jed, talk about, I guess, any future goals, plans, whether it be for Votary or for you personally. What do you have in mind?
I definitely am going to do more of this. I love this. This is enjoyable. And I think that there will be more businesses that I build. Mm-hmm. Very interested in tech right now. Actually, I've always been, but I'm leaning in to tech and AI and sort of seeing what the future holds and experimenting with things, both in filmmaking and other apps and SaaS, software as a service offerings. Continuing to be there for my kids and my family as the top priority. I know if I fast forward and look at myself late in life, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that I'll be proud of myself for not straying away from the top priority, which is being there for my wife and for my kids, and emotionally present and there to help guide and spend time and enjoy each other. That's the top thing. And you can do that whether you have a little money or a lot of money. Money is not really, yes, we need it in life, but it does not determine how you are with your relationships. It does not need to.
Yeah.
And it comes and goes. I've had seasons with plenty of money and seasons with barely any. The good news is that having learned things, you can bounce back quickly from seasons where you don't have much. So yeah, my future, it holds more business, more fun, adding value to people's lives in fun and interesting ways, like doing content together or figuring out nonprofits or for-profits that are changing the world for the better. I want to lean in on helping them with their storytelling and their offerings, and just enjoy it. Enjoy it. I don't want to be I don't want to ever get into a season where it's all about the striving or doing so much survival work that you're not enjoying life. Like, I want to enjoy no matter what, through the ups and downs. I want to set a good example, not just when times are good, but when times are challenging too.
It's beautiful. I love that, Jed. Should we, before we close out, do you say do you have a copy of your book? We wave that up to the angles
Sure.
of the camera. Excellent.
Okay, so this is the book. It's called Fly. It's take your business to new heights using the 7 powerful steps of story acceleration. And really, we just call it story growth. Story growth is a partnership program that we have. We work with nonprofits and for-profits that are doing good in the world. And we try to amplify their message through beautiful cinematic storytelling. And if you want to read the book, there's other stuff in it. Fly. Get your copy on Amazon.
Love it. Jed Burdick, thanks so much, man. We got to do this again. We'll have you back on. We'll do plenty more of these, I'm sure. Have these wonderful conversations. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's fun.
Awesome. Love it.